Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, lovers and seekers, those who are lost and those who are found. Tonight, I will be reading from the compilation titled Outlaw Creative: The Geometry of Life. Our reading for this evening is titled Family. Family is one of those words that refuses to stay tidy. It will not sit still in a framed photograph or a dictionary definition. It means warmth, and it means pressure. It means the people who knew the child before the adult existed. It means the people whose choices built the floor under another person's feet, and sometimes the holes in that floor as well. The value of family is not found in sentimental slogans. It shows up in the strange, stubborn way those bonds keep insisting on mattering, even when someone swears they are done with all of it. It is there in the grief that arrives when a phone stops ringing, in the relief when it finally does, and in the quiet way a name still pulls the heart sideways years after a funeral. Family matters because, for better and for worse, it is where most human beings first learn what a person is worth, what loyalty feels like, and what to do with pain. The first school family is the first classroom where a child studies reality without knowing the word ontology, and ethics without hearing the word ought. Before any doctrine or philosophy arrives, there is a pattern of voices, reactions, and silences. A child learns how conflict is handled. Is it slammed doors, cold silence, tired apologies, or honest repair? How vulnerability is treated, shame and mockery, or protection and care, whether promises are decorative or binding. These lessons embed themselves in muscle and reflex long before they show up in language. The adult who flinches at raised voices, or who unconsciously apologizes for existing, or who assumes abandonment is inevitable, is often still obeying patterns learned in that first school. The value of family here is foundational. Even a flawed family offers some frame against which a child can push. A story is being told about what it means to belong, to be forgiven, to fail, to try again. The story may be distorted or half-true, but there is still a story. Later in life, that is what gives a person something to revise, reject, or reclaim. The mirror and the crucible. Family is a mirror. Family is a crucible. As a mirror, it reflects versions of the self that no one else remembers. A sibling might recall the timid child inside the confident adult. A parent might see the stubbornness that has been there since 3 years old. These reflections keep an individual from believing their own press releases. Family remembers earlier drafts. As a crucible, family compresses time and intensity. Old conflicts never really die. They lie in wait behind trivial conversations about holidays and casserole recipes. The room where everyone gathers is also the room where decades of unspoken grief, rivalry, and fear sit in the corners. The value of this is not that conflict is pleasant. The value is that family offers one of the few arenas where long arcs can be seen. There is enough shared history to notice change. The father who finally apologizes after 40 years, the sibling who stops drinking, the grandparent who holds the new baby and quietly lays down a lifetime of bitterness. Family makes visible the slow work of character across time. It also exposes the truth that growth rarely happens under perfect conditions. Memory, blood, and the dead. One of the deep values of family is its relationship to the dead. Family is where the names live, the ones on the old photographs, the ones on the headstones, the ones that still surface in jokes and sayings. A person learns, implicitly, what it means to carry a story forward, to speak of Granddad's way of doing things or Aunt so-and-so's stubborn courage is to admit that the present walks in the shade of the past. This is not nostalgia. It is an acknowledgement of debt. Someone got up early and went to work. Someone stayed when leaving would have been easier. Someone failed catastrophically, and someone else decided not to repeat that failure. The living stand on those decisions whether they like it or not. The value of family memory is that it can become a form of moral accountability. To remember an ancestor honestly, both the tenderness and the harm, is to receive a kind of assignment: continue the good, do not continue the damage. The living have the chance to extend the shade cast by a good ancestor, or to redraw the shadow cast by a cruel one. A person without any contact with such memory floats. A person with it has something to answer to. That burden is also a gift. Chosen family and the widening circle, the phrase family of origin, quietly claims something important. Family is not only blood. There is the family that gave birth and the family that is built along the way. The value of family memory is that it can become a form of moral accountability. To remember an ancestor honestly, both the tenderness and the harm, is to receive a kind of assignment: continue the good, do not continue the damage. The living have the chance to extend the shade cast by a good ancestor, or to redraw the shadow cast by a cruel one. A person without any contact with such memory floats. A person with it has something to answer to. That burden is also a gift. Chosen family and the widening circle. The phrase family of origin quietly claims something important. Family is not only blood. There is the family that gave birth and the family that is built along the way. Chosen family matters precisely because the family of origin is often limited, wounded, or absent. Friends, mentors, neighbors, and sometimes total strangers step into roles that biology refused or betrayed. The person who shows up at the hospital, the one who listens without judgment at 2 a.m, the one who remembers significant dates without being told. These people are family in the functional sense. The value here is not that chosen family replaces origin. It is that it redeems the concept. It says, this is what family was supposed to be doing. If those assigned by blood could not or would not, others will. When chosen family forms around shared values, mutual respect, honesty, refusal to manipulate, it becomes a living argument against despair. It shows that loyalty is still possible, that care is not a myth, that a person is not doomed to repeat every pattern inherited. Boundaries. As a form of honor, the sentimental view says, family means unconditional access. The more honest view says, family requires boundaries, or it will devour itself. Some families try to extract loyalty as payment for existence. Because we are family becomes a weapon used to excuse cruelty, control, or exploitation. In such environments, the language of duty is detached from the reality of care. The hard truth is that sometimes the most honoring act a person can offer their family is to limit contact, decline enmeshment, or refuse participation in cycles of harm. A boundary is not the denial of connection. It is an attempt to make connection truthful. No, in that context is not betrayal. It is a late, painful form of honesty. The value of family here is paradoxical. Because those bonds matter, they cannot be left to lie. They must be named accurately. A parent who refuses to face their own violence will not magically become benign because a child keeps showing up. A sibling who manipulates and undermines others will not suddenly become supportive because everyone pretends. Boundaries, then, are a way of saying, this is what real love would look like on both sides. Until then, this is as close as it can safely come. When family fails. There are families that do not merely struggle, they fail in catastrophic ways. Abuse, abandonment, chronic humiliation, addiction, or violence can turn the word family into something that tastes like rust. At that point, it is reasonable to ask whether family has any value at all. One bleak answer is, perhaps not. Another answer is quieter and harder. Even when family fails, it still offers a map of lines that should have been drawn differently. The negative image of the photograph still reveals the shape. A person who has known deep betrayal inside their own house often develops a finely tuned sense of justice. The cruelty that was normalized there becomes something they cannot stomach in the wider world. The pain that was brushed aside becomes something they will not ignore when they see it happening to others. The failure becomes a negative teacher. This is not to romanticize suffering. Some wounds do not turn into wisdom, they just hurt. But the possibility is real. Out of the failure of family can come a fierce refusal to perpetuate the same pattern. A different kind of home can be built, one small decision at a time. The quiet work of staying. If there is any single word that captures the value of family at its best, it might be staying. Not staying at any cost, not staying in the face of danger, but the ordinary, non-dramatic staying that looks like checking on a brother after a bad week, taking the call from an aging parent, sending a message to a cousin no one else remembers, showing up to help a friend move again, telling the next generation the truth about the last one. The staying is never perfect. People get tired, lose patience, say sharp things, disappear for seasons. The value lies not in an imaginary flawless record, but in the fact the door does not close forever. There is still a way back, a conversation possible, an apology that might be heard. Family, in the end, is not proof that love is easy. It is evidence that love is stubborn. It keeps returning to the same street, knocking on the same door, renegotiating the same old agreements with new information. Where family is healthy, that stubbornness builds a refuge in a chaotic world. Where family is broken, that same stubbornness sometimes builds a new refuge from the ruins of the old. Either way, the value of family shows itself over time, in the hands that catch someone when they fall, in the lessons that warn someone not to push another off the same cliff, and in the stories that keep the dead present enough to matter. Family is not simple and never has been, but the fact that it refuses to stop mattering, that it still haunts, still comforts, still demands, says something about human beings that cannot be explained away. No one gets here alone, and no one leaves here alone either, not really. There is always a line of faces, remembered or imagined, standing just behind the name on the door.